Okay, let's go on with examples with function constructors. We have already created civil plane.prototype and initialized two instances, small plane and large plane. But now prototype of civil plane.prototype is object.prototype. Let's now add one more element into this prototype chain, and it will be airplane.prototype. So prototype of civil plane.prototype will be airplane.prototype, and prototype of airplane.prototype will be object.prototype. And I will set two properties, wingspan and max range of flight, by this prototype. It will also have one own method, info about airplane. And of course, any instance in the prototype chain will inherit this method from airplane.prototype. Okay, let's do that. Let me copy this entire example form, copy it and paste here below. Let me uncomment it, and it will be example 5. And here we will create prototype chain, and the chain will be following: civil plane.prototype, then airplane.prototype, then object.prototype. Okay. This function will be left untouched. I will delete this part. Seats info and modified seats number will be left here. Props for small plane will be left, and here small plane will be created using new civil plane syntax. So this is unchanged and this is unchanged too. And let me delete those 3 lines. Okay, like this. Let's add new function constructor here above civil plane function. And it will be called airplane. Again, I start with capital A because it is function constructor. Here will be also props. And inside of this function, I will set two properties, wingspan and max range of flight. So this wingspan equal to props.wingspan, and this dot max range of flight will be equal to props dot max range of flight. And I will add one more method here, same as with civil plane. I need to add it to airplane dot prototype. So airplane dot prototype dot airplane info, and it will be function without parameters. And here I will log to the console wingspan of the airplane is $ curly braces this dot wingspan, and maximal range of flight is $ curly braces this dot max range of flight. Okay, here is a method of airplane dot prototype. Let's now save, and let's try to access small plane that is created here. Small plane. Enter. Here is instance of the civil plane.prototype, but its prototype is still object.prototype. Here it is. It means that now airplane.prototype is absent in this prototype chain. And if I will try to access this method, this one, airplane info, let's do that, small plane dot airplane info, I will get type error. Airplane info is not a function. That's because now this method is not available for instances of civil plane. Okay, here now we need to insert this airplane.prototype into our prototype chain. And with function constructors, it is not a trivial task. And if you don't know how function constructors work behind the scenes, it may be really difficult for you to understand what you need to do in order to insert new prototype into the prototype chain. But we have already discussed what is object.create, and you know that each function is equal to function constructor. So keeping this information in mind, we can insert airplane.prototype into the prototype chain. Let's do this here below declaration of the civil plane function. First, I will reassign value to the civil plane.prototype, and it will be equal to object.create, and we will pass airplane.prototype as an argument. So let's do this. Civil plane.prototype equal to object.create. Let me make this smaller. And here we will pass airplane.prototype. What will happen after this line? After this line, proto of civil plane.prototype will be equal to airplane.prototype. Remember from previous lesson that object.create will set proto property and hidden prototype property equal to the object that you pass here as an argument. And in this case, civil plane.prototype, let me log here, civil plane.prototype dot proto will be equal to airplane.prototype. Let's save, and here we will get true. I will add here comment. But using this line, we have broken rule that constructor should be equal to the function. What I mean here? I mean that civil plane.prototype.constructor should be equal to civil plane. Let's save, and now I get false. Here is false now. But what is the value of this property? Let's check this here in the console. And it is airplane function. But can you answer why is it airplane now? Let's check this together. Let's try to access civil plane.prototype. Enter, expand it, and here I see object with three properties: modify seats number, seats info, and proto. And this proto is now equal to airplane.prototype, because here we have created civil plane.prototype using object.create. But constructor property was deleted here. Remember that object.create creates empty object with one property, proto. And that's what happens here. And after this line, I have added two methods to the prototype: seatsinfo and modify seats number. That's why here you see that this object contains three properties. But if I try to access civil plane.prototype.constructor, like in this case, I will get here airplane because of inheritance. So constructor is a property of the prototype, here it is. And that's why we get here this constructor function. But we need to get here civil plane instead of airplane. That's why we need to assign value to this property and make it equal to civil plane. And we need to do that here. So civil plane.prototype.constructor equal to civil plane. Let's save, and let's access civil plane.prototype now. And now I will get an object with four properties: constructor, modify seats number, seats info, and proto. And now this expression will be truthy. Let me copy this console log statement, paste it here, save, and now here you will get true. It means that now we have correctly inserted airplane.prototype into the prototype chain. And now airplane.prototype is prototype of civil plane.prototype. Let me comment out those console log statements, those two and this one. And now let's modify those objects that are used for initialization of two planes, for small plane and for large plane. So we will add two more properties that will be set by airplane prototype. And it is wingspan and max range of flight. Let me scroll down and add those values first to this object. Wingspan, it will be equal to, for example, 20, and the max range of flight will be 1000. And for large plane, wingspan will be, for example, 60, and max range of flight will be 3500, like this. Let's now save, and let's look at the small plane. Let's expand it, and you see that it still has only two properties, number of seats and proto, and it doesn't have wingspan or max range of flight. If I try to access wingspan property of small plane, I will get undefined. Why this happens? How do you think? This happens because this function was not called when we initialized new instances of the civil plane.prototype. So here we set only one property in this function constructor. It means that we need to add function call to the airplane function. And we need to do this here at the beginning of this function. Let's call airplane function here. Airplane.call, and here I will pass two arguments. First will be reference to this. And what about second argument? What we need to pass here? We need to pass here props. That's because airplane function uses props. It has this parameter to set wingspan and max range of flight. That's why we need to call it with this and props. Okay, let's try to save now, and let's try to access small plane again. And now it has required properties: max range of flight, number of seats, wingspan, and proto. It means that finally we got desired result. So small plane is instance of the civil plane is instance of the airplane, and airplane is instance of the object. Okay, but notice that those properties, I mean max range of flight, number of seats, and wingspan, are own properties of each instance of the civil plane. If I will access large plane, I will also get object with four properties. But now max range of flight is 3500, number of seats is 250, and wingspan is 60. But prototype chain is the same. Here is civil plane.prototype, next one is airplane.prototype, and last one is object.prototype. Okay, let's now try to call method that we have configured at the airplane.prototype. I am talking about this method, airplane_info. Let's call it on the small plane object. So small plane.airplane_info and function call. And I get string, wingspan of the airplane is 20 and maximal range of flight is 1000. Let's do the same with large plane object. Large plane, airplane_info, call, and here I get this string. And here is very important notice. So airplane_info is method of the airplane.prototype. It is not own method of small plane or large plane. Let me try to access small plane again, expand this prototype chain. Let me make this window larger. I'll expand this proto and this proto. And you see airplane_info here in the airplane.prototype. But in the code, you see here references to this .wingspan and this max range of flight. And what is this when we call airplane_info on small plane or large plane objects? So, in this function call inside of the airplane_info function, this will point to the large plane. That's because airplane_info function is called on the large plane object. That's why this points to the large plane. And it doesn't matter where this method is located in the prototype chain. In this case, it is located 2 levels up from the small plane and large plane objects. Here it is. But it still has access to any properties of each of the objects, small plane or large plane. And of course, you can easily add another methods to the airplane.prototype that will probably change some properties of instances of civilplane.prototype. Okay, let's now summarize. In this example, we have added one more element to the prototype chain, and it is airplane.prototype. And you see that if you use function constructors, it is not a trivial task. You need to perform several actions to achieve this result. So first, you need to use object.create and reassign value of the prototype. Like in this example, we have reassigned prototype of the civil plane. But after this step, constructor property of this prototype property will be deleted, because object.create creates brand new object only with one property, proto. That's why we need to assign value to the constructor property of the prototype property equal to function itself. And finally, inside of the function constructor here, we need to call parent function. We don't call parent function constructor, we call simply function. We don't use new keyword, because we don't need to call two constructor functions. We simply need to call this parent function in order to set additional properties of the instance of the civil plane.prototype. That's why here is regular function call, and here we pass two arguments, reference to this, that is the instance of the civil plane prototype, and second argument is props, because here inside of this function we use reference to props parameter. And this was old way to create prototype chains using function constructors. So again, we use object.create, then reassign constructor and call parent function. And that's how prototype chains were created before ES6 classes. With ES6 classes, it is much more simple. And you will use single keyword for that. And we will talk about this soon. But next you will get a challenge. And in the challenge, you will need to add one more prototype to this chain. And it will be vehicle.prototype. This prototype will set additional properties such as max speed and weight, and it will contain one additional method, info about vehicle. Okay, task for this challenge comes next. See you.